Hello everybody, I'm Mike Maddox, president of ASK, and I have here with me Scott Freitag. Hello Scott.
Hey Mike, how you doing?
Good, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
We're talking about the upcoming MMA, which is not mixed martial arts, it's the Michigan Manufacturers Association conference, Operational Excellence Conference, coming up in East Lansing on March 12th. Right? You're aware of that?
Yeah,
because you're going to be there with me.
I'm going to be there, and I'm excited.
Yeah, and I am too, because we're going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart and something that I think manufacturing leaders need to hear about. And the title of our presentation is Why Combating Cybersecurity Attacks or Combating Cyber Threats is a Leadership Level Responsibility. And I know, Scott, for those that don't know, you're a client technology manager with ASK, meaning you work day in and day out with our customers, and so you're out talking to them all the time. And you know what I find, and tell me if you find this, many businesses don't view it that way today. They kind of view it as an IT issue or a technology issue.
Well, I mean, it is one more thing added to the plate of things you have to take care of, and so it's real easy. Just, technology is involved in cybersecurity, so why not give it to your IT staff?
Right.
So there's just kind of an assumption that's made when, in all reality, it does need to come from the top down of the organization.
It definitely does. And at the conference, Scott and I will be presenting the reasons for that. And we want to kind of give you a little preview of that today, just to kind of pique your interest and hopefully encourage you to attend the conference for our session. And there are many other valuable breakout sessions. I'm sure none of them nearly as good as ours, but they're going to be decent, I'm supposing.
Safe assumption.
Yeah, that's a safe assumption. So we're going to be talking about that on March 12th. And just to kind of give you, as I said, a preview, a couple of things that I wanted to touch on today and get your thoughts on is a common issue for manufacturers today, at least at the leadership level, is that, hey, I think we already have cybersecurity protection in place. I think that's been taken care of. Do you hear that from clients?
I hear that all the time. The assumption is made if we have IT and we have some of the basics, we've got a nice firewall and we've got our antivirus, we're probably covered.
Yeah, and what I think that stems from is what we started with, which is the faulty assumption that this is an IT responsibility. And we're going to get into this at the conference, but to kind of lay the groundwork there, technology has evolved, cybersecurity has evolved, and the threat to the manufacturer in today's day and age has evolved at an even greater pace. And I think when a business leader asks an IT leader, are we taken care of, there's a mismatch of communication there. The IT leader's talking about what was sufficient in the past. They're not necessarily recognizing what's needed today. And to kind of lay the groundwork on that, before I do that, let's just talk about where we're at. Manufacturing is what, the number 2 attacked industry for cybercrime?
It's number 2. It's financial's number 1, manufacturing's number 2, and healthcare's number 3.
Yes, so manufacturing ahead of healthcare, right behind financial. And why is that? I mean, why is manufacturing? Because people don't realize that. I think that surprises people when you tell them manufacturing is the second most attacked industry.
I mean, finance makes sense. People are trying to steal money.
Yeah.
But when you look at the manufacturing world, everybody's trying to make their name in the manufacturing world. Every manufacturer believes, they have a secret sauce that makes them unique in their field. And the best way to, break that company is to steal their intellectual property.
Yeah.
And also, how many of these manufacturing devices, things on the line, are now connected to the internet?
Right.
So how are you protecting them? Antivirus can't go on, a line machine,
right,
or a CNC machine.
Right.
So how are you going to protect that?
And that's Internet of Things. Everything on the production floor is now connected. Advanced robotics, Industry 4.0. Manufacturing has adopted technology at a pace that exceeds really any other industry to stay competitive and to get ahead of the competition and to create more efficiency. And that has led to the exposure. Banks have, for the most part, hardened their surface. They have gotten to the point where they have taken some proactive cybersecurity steps.
Yeah, they have more compliance regulations. So I think in the manufacturing, you see the breakout of those that have adopted 4.0 right out of the gate. And then you have also the manufacturers are just waiting and haven't made a change in years.
Right.
Which, has its own vulnerabilities as well.
Yeah, for sure. And at ASK, we talk about the 3 pillars of technology. It's a term that we use with our customers. Can you describe those for the people that are watching us? Can you kind of just touch on each one briefly?
Yeah, and each one has its own history as well. So we look at the first pillar, which is what we looked at probably 15, 20 years ago, is really getting some managed IT, whether that's an internal staff or getting a managed service provider. What are you doing to patch your servers, patch your workstations? What are you doing for antivirus? When the Nortons and the McAfees, broke out, when you'd get your antivirus CD in the mail.
Right.
And, getting all your other applications patched. I mean, those were the important things, but...
Yeah, back in those days, like in the year 2000, you'd have Norton AntiVirus, you'd go to Best Buy Circuit City, pick up a firewall, and that was sufficient back then. I mean, that was good standard practice, and and you needed some people to oversee that and manage that, and that was good. That was industry class and industry standard back in 2000. So that was the first pillar. That's evolved though.
That has evolved, and now, well, I mean, go 10 years ago, where what happens if we get breached somehow? What happens, or if drives fail?
Yeah.
So
server fails.
Server fails. So having a solid backup, because what happens if you lose all your proprietary data?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, 2010 era, it was a time in our industry where we were talking to customers about, hey, you have tape backup today, or you have a file level backup, that just you select what files you want it to back up, and it does that. It doesn't really get tested. It doesn't get monitored. There's really no proving it out. But you have something there just in case. That was kind of what was changing about 10 years ago. Customers were realizing, hey, we can't take that risk. We need what they call block level backup. We need to be able to capture all of our important data, make sure it's backed up locally and somewhere else, and we can get it back if a server fails.
Right. Yeah, and the block level, the image, being able to be up and running in a matter of a couple hours rather than waiting for new hardware and getting all those files put back in, the applications reinstalled. So.
And companies 10 years ago then started to adopt industry class firewalls, hardened, dedicated firewalls. They weren't using floppy disks for their antivirus Norton disks anymore. They were using commercially available, constantly updated.
Yeah, you weren't getting your firewalls from Circuit City anymore because
they weren't around. Yeah.
They didn't exist anymore. So
things changed. And so now that was 10 years ago. And that's where we find most companies are at today. This is the mismatch. So as a business leader, you go to your IT staff and you say, are we okay on cybersecurity? And I think the IT leaders, with good intentions, they're not trying to be misleading. They're saying, we've got, in their mind, they're thinking, we have industry class antivirus. It's updated every 4 hours. We patch our systems. We have a partner company, or internally, we're monitoring all that to make sure that it's happening. We have block level backups. We can recover from the cloud or locally. We have all that, so we're doing everything we can do.
Yeah,
but that's not enough, is it?
Yeah, or they'll say, okay, we've got the Barracuda firewall, we've got the Fortinet, we've got the Meraki, we've got the Dell Sonic Wall, and those are all well and good and still necessary. But those tools are reactionary in nature. In other words, they need to know the threat in order to prevent it. And cybersecurity has changed all of that. So how do you protect yourselves from the things your hardware appliances don't know about?
Right.
And that brings us, to 2020 and the idea of managed detection and response. How to stop those threats that some of them are unknown to the world.
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
That time.
Yeah, and we're going to, in our session on the 12th of March, give business leaders that come to the breakout a list of questions they can ask their IT department in order to determine if they need to dive into this further and look at it a little closer. Because as I said earlier, it's never, in my experience, it's not the IT department trying to be misleading. It's just that IT and cybersecurity are two different areas of specialty. And I know that first and foremost because we have both here at ASK. We have IT, very strong IT people. We have very strong cybersecurity people. It's two different skill sets, two different mindsets. And an IT person looks at it from an architecture layer and they go, yeah, antivirus is there. We have a firewall. We have backups. But what you're talking about is, do we have proactive cybersecurity solutions? Do we have the term SIM, right? That is something that, not to throw buzzwords out, but do we have supercomputers that are looking at everything coming in and out of our environment on a real-time basis and determining if any of it's ransomware or malware or has the potential to take my business down?
Yeah, or just a macro in an Excel or Word file that could, then drop a payload later. So, I mean, we look at this. What are the questions? I mean, I'll divert that question back to you. You own a business. What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, really it comes down to, and I had a client of ours say this to me. I realized, he said, that my business is literally at the risk of a single employee clicking on a link in an email that could have ransomware in it, taking my entire business down. And when you think about that statement, that is a true statement for most companies.
Yeah, and if you're a small and medium-sized manufacturer and you get hit hard like that, the odds are against you that you're going to stay in business.
Yeah, they say over 60% of businesses that get hit with ransomware do not stay in business. The average cost of a ransomware breach is somewhere around $8 million today. For a small, mid-sized company like ASK, that's staggering.
It's crippling.
Yeah, it's crippling. And so, we're gonna get into that. And it's more than just the tools. So we've talked about antivirus. We've talked about having proactive supercomputers that look for ransomware, malware, cybersecurity breaches. Having a team of people that are specialists in cybersecurity. That's all technology, but it's so much more than that. It's process, right? Do you have a disaster recovery plan for your business? A plan of where your people are going to work if something physically happens to your business. What if all your servers, are infected or something happens? What's your recovery process? Is that written down? Has it been practiced?
When do you and when don't you contact an attorney or contact your cyber insurance if you haven't? What is that process? And things like that. If I owned a business, that would keep me up at night.
What's my recovery point objective or my recovery time objective? And those are buzzwords. Basically, how long could I be down without access to my critical systems, and how much would it cost me by the hour? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for every business that's different. But as a business owner, as a business leader, we have an obligation to know the answer to that. Because when you go down, you don't want to realize and figure that out after the fact, that it costs you $100,000 an hour to be down.
You could lose one of your clients doing that.
Yeah, very much so.
So, I think one of the first things to look at is it's okay to have an assessment. If your IT person or managed service provider says we're taken care of, it's okay to get another opinion on that. It's not a judgment against them. It's just showing this is where we're at right now and what can we do to improve. So, we're all about, we talk about at ASK, continuous improvement.
Right.
What are the areas that we can improve in?
Yeah, and along with that, the IT departments that we work with day in and day out, and our client base all have IT staff. They're overloaded as it is. They're trying to manage and monitor and maintain the infrastructure, which, by the way, is 100 times bigger and more complicated than it was 10 years ago. Right. For any business, especially in manufacturing. And their staff level hasn't increased that much. So they're overloaded. They don't have the bandwidth or capacity or expertise to look at cybersecurity and take those actions. Most
of them are probably overworked already.
Yeah.
They're a system admin. They're also the application champion. They're also responsible for like new user education. And then to put them in charge of monitoring threats, one of the things we look at, if you really want to build that internally, you're looking at least 6 employees. By the time you look at vacation time, sick time, It takes 6 employees to monitor a standard business 24/7, 365.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You know, you read different statistics on spending, but businesses that are taking the cybersecurity threat seriously, well, we have one client that says it this way: there are two types of businesses: those that are getting ahead of this, making it a key part of their strategic leadership responsibility, and those that are going to be out of business in the near future. That's the way he describes it. That's kind of blunt, but I think we're at that point. And if you read all you got to do is read the paper. I mean, who reads a paper? Read the news anymore. I don't think there are papers anymore, are there? Like physical papers? I'm old.
You can print out the article online that you just read on your laptop.
All you got to do is check out the news, and and you realize that this threat is real, and it's facing your business, and it's your responsibility as a business leader, and my responsibility as a business leader, to ask the right questions. And our goal in this session is to arm you with enough information to go back and ask the questions that you need to ask to determine where you need to be spending time, or if you need to bring in an entity to do an assessment.
Yeah, and one of the things we're going to look at is, what should a business be budgeting on a regular basis? And I think one of the ways to look at it is, if your competitor's doing this and you're not, and you get breached, your competitor's got a huge advantage over you. And so, we look at it, like finance. Finance on average spends 7.5% of their annual budget on IT and cybersecurity.
7.5%.
7.5%, and it makes sense. They are the #1 target.
Yeah.
Manufacturing's #2. Now, luckily, you don't have the same compliance regulations, so that number is about 2.25. So if you're a $10 million business, you should be spending almost $250,000 a year on your IT and cybersecurity.
Yeah, and I think every business that we consult with is different too. Cybersecurity protection is a spectrum, right? You can go from very weak protection to extremely strong. Where you fall on that continuum is really an individual decision that is going to depend on your business and the criticality of your data, the exposure, how long you can afford to be down, your brand recognition. A lot of factors go into that. That's what we specialize in, is helping customers make that determination. But I think it's safe to say that most businesses today are too far on the weak end of the spectrum and need to come farther to the right.
They're waiting for something to happen, I think is the one way to look at it. Is, we've been safe for the past 20 years. We haven't had a major outage, but the world has changed, and the criminals are more and more aggressive. They're not just going after the big guys like the Sonys and the Home Depots that we've seen over the past few years. They're throwing out a big net, and whoever gets caught gets caught. And so
they travel at the speed of light, right? Mm-hmm. So these aren't like traditional criminals. They can hit every business they want, and they can buy it on the dark web. They don't even have to be good at it. They can just buy a package of cyber attacks and launch them. Right, that's what's going on in the world of cybercrime today.
Yeah.
So come and see us on March 12th. Check out the other breakout sessions too. But if nothing else, at least come see us, because we're going to be there, and Scott will be wearing those Skechers, which are fantastic. You got to see them. You got to see them live and in person. So thanks everybody for listening. I'm Mike. This is Scott. We're with ASK. We look forward to seeing you on March 12th.